In the section of the letter to the Ephesians, which we heard just a few minutes ago, Paul is touching upon and explaining, if you will, one of the most sensitive and difficult issues in the very early church, and that was the relationship between the Jews and the Gentiles. We know from our salvation history that the Jews had seen themselves as a people apart. They had been chosen by God to be God's special people. And this choice, this specialness, if you will, was symbolized by practices such as circumcision, the many dietary laws, restrictions regarding marriage, and many other forms of social interaction. And the Gentiles were seen by virtue of their nature as outsiders, as strangers, aliens, rightly separated from inclusion in God's people. So the law, as understood and practiced by the Jews, served in a sense as a wall, as Paul describes it today, a boundary that effectively separated the two groups. And then, of course, came Jesus, a devout Jew for sure, yet receptive, open to the Gentiles. And as his followers during the early years after Jesus died and rose, as they reflected on what it was that he had taught them and what it was that he had showed them, it became clear that the Gentiles were also dear to God, and that whatever Jesus came to bring to the Jews was also available to the Gentiles. And it took really kind of a long time to clarify the basic insight that in Christ, the obligations of the Jewish law had been done away with. And so it was no longer necessary for people to observe the Jewish law in order to be pleasing to God. Paul explains to the Ephesians that Jews and Gentiles have been brought together by Christ's death into a state of peace. Peace with each other and peace with God. It is as if the wall that had come to separate the Jews from the rest of humanity had been effectively torn down. And that tension between Jews and Gentiles so many years ago in the early years of the church may seem like a distant and irrelevant historical question to us in the 21st century. Well, interestingly, there are still arguments among Christians about the relationship of the law and grace in the economy, the means, if you will, of salvation. And yes, that issue may have been significantly resolved, but even now there are other tensions and struggles within the church, perhaps at times even within our own parish. But we're Christians. We're Christians. We're called to be an example to the world of what it means to live as a citizen of God's kingdom. That vision that Jesus Christ taught and lived. So rather than walls, you and I try to build bridges between those who are different or those who disagree with us. Yes, we hold firm in our conviction that our most fundamental identity does not rest upon anything other than the image and likeness of God, which is inside each one of us. So for this reason, when we disagree with others on even terribly important issues related to our church, or related to our country for that matter, the starting point of our difficult conversations is always to honor that profound, inherent, and equal dignity of each and every member of the human family. And no, we do not surrender our strongly held convictions. No, but we do understand that we are never the exclusive bearers of truth on an issue. And we do everything we can to avoid dividing people into us and them. We take to heart what is the frequent urging of our Holy Father, Pope Francis, to dialogue fearlessly, for sure, but always first affirm the other person. To accept the fact that, yes, sometimes we are different. We do exercise our freedom to think differently, and we do express ourselves, but we do so with respect toward the other person. In other words, we don't, or we ought not, to paper over our differences. Rather, we ought to respectfully engage them. St. Paul also tells us that Jesus established this peace and this unity through the cross. Jesus Christ is the one who bore in his body all of the violence that human beings turn against each other, all of the breakdowns of communication, all the hatred that we have ever had for each other. The resurrection is the victory of communion over all that stuff, over all that separates us. Perhaps today we would do well to be reminded of the ways in which you and I at times have to die to self in order to foster unity. Prudence demands of us that we learn to discern which battles out there are worthwhile, and when we need to silence our own voice and our own opinions for the sake of the other. The cross also reminds us of the importance of service to the other, even in spite of our differences. And this, yes, this might mean reaching out to others to find a common cause, but it also might mean finding a way to care for and serve those that we may so strongly disagree with. In today's brief gospel, we learn that in encountering the vast crowd, Jesus' heart was moved with pity toward them, and we might say that he was moved with compassion. And as the apostles had just learned, exercising passion can be exhausting. It is especially difficult to be compassionate toward those with whom we disagree, or don't like, or don't understand. It can suck the energy right out of us. Sometimes it's easier, really, just to withdraw or to build a wall to insulate ourselves from all of this. But that's not what Jesus did. Jesus encountered all kinds of folks with all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of experiences, all kinds of beliefs, and it seems as if every single one of them was important to him. Every single one of them was worth saving. And since the time of Jesus, the church has done that same thing by embracing within its fold mystics and prophets and hermits and activists, even you and me, all as legitimate expressions of what it means to be authentically Catholic. Moved with pity, Jesus feeds those assembled with his word. Next week, he feeds the crowd with bread and fish. And as the bread of the word and the bread of the Eucharist are broken right here, right at St. Vincent's, right in this out-of-the-way place, you and I, we find our rest in him, and we are renewed. So let us continually return to the one who leads us and guides us and feeds us and teaches us and heals us and forgives us and remains ever present to empower us in all the things that we do in the cause of salvation.